Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. On tonight's episode, we're going to break down the spring breakout game, which happened over the weekend and featured several notable performances from Orioles prospects. That'll be on tonight's episode of Orioles on the Verge, which is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for betting on all the madness. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from college basketball to a $200,000 bracket contest, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. As I mentioned at the top of the show, this past weekend brought us a spring breakout game, the second annual contest. Saw the Orioles prospects square off against the Yankees prospects and win by a final of 5-4 on a walk-off hit from Leandro Arias, the 19th ranked prospect according to our top 50 list in the Orioles farm system, was one of several prospects who stood out in this game. And you can read about this over at our Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com, and catch some video highlights from the game there. But we're going to break it down a little bit more tonight. Now, we should throw in the quick disclaimer that there was no publicly available StatCast data to back this game at Ed Smith Stadium in Sarasota. So you're not going to get a lot of hard data on this episode. So we're going to have to rely on the eye test a little bit. But what we could see for the eye test, and frankly, it was a pretty decent amount for an exhibition game, was pretty good. So we're going to get into that a little bit tonight. And Nick, I'll start with you since you wrote that piece on Substack that I just plugged a moment ago. What were some of your takeaways from this game?
I think just broadly speaking, before we talk about individual players, it was the pitching stood out, of course. We can talk about Keeler Morphe in his performance, but the rest of the pitching really stood out. Lots of zeros on the board there against an older, advanced Norfolk prospect team. I enjoyed that. The defense was on display. That was good to see. And honestly, my biggest takeaway, there's really nothing, even just the eye test, right? We can get more excited about certain guys. We got to see DJ Layton for the very first time, like live and in person. We got to see Steven Martinez in a batter's box. I believe he got an at bat in this one. Maybe he didn't. I can't remember. He did. Jordan Sanchez. We got to see a couple of guys for the very first time. Chase Alsop, but there's a few guys who I'm way more excited to see in 2025. But to me, the biggest takeaway, the one hard and fast takeaway that I took away that this game produced, was Enrique Bradfield Jr. I joined the Enrique Bradfield Jr. Stan Club. I was already feeling a lot better about him as a prospect coming into this season, as we've talked so much about him this offseason. But that interview at the end of the game, the whole story coming out afterwards, dedicating the game to his friend who had just passed away 2-3 days before. But that interview that he carried with Melanie Newman and Jim Callis, who were on the call, man, that is a young man. I feel old as dirt saying that, but he's 13 years younger than me. That young man clearly understands the journey he's already been on and what has gotten him to this point, and he understands the journey that lies ahead. And he has clearly defined goals and a mission in front of him, and he is not going to stop until he achieves those goals and achieves that mission. And you talk about having a good head on your shoulders, any cliche you want, it's there. That was my biggest takeaway, was I'm cheering for Enrique Bradfield Jr. harder than probably anyone else, because I want to see that guy achieve everything he talked about in that broadcast.
Absolutely. Co-sign everything you just said. Off the field characters through the roof, intangibles. Like the way he was getting fired up, and just he's going to be so good for the Orioles clubhouse once he hits it. And because it's a loose clubhouse, we love it. Jordan Westberg's all business, but he's kind of got that Gunnar Henderson fire, but in a more enthusiastic, fun way. I think it's going to be perfect fit for what we're building up. We did it on the Verge. We're building this team up at the major league level. Yeah, Enrique Bradfield Jr. could not have had a better showcase of what he brings to the table. Just he had a nice solid base hit. I think he bunt for a base hit. He's scoring on just wild pitches and errant pickoff throws. Just his speed is causing chaos. And yeah, I think again, just can't say enough good things about Enrique Bradfield Jr. And I'm glad he's an Oriole, and I'm glad he brings a different tool set than we're used to seeing when it comes to these Orioles top prospects.
Bradfield went 2 for 3 in that game, and as you both touched on, his speed really wreaking havoc on the Yankees. He swiped a bag in that game. He's overall had a pretty good spring, made a good impression in Major League camp during his time there, and very high hopes for him going into the season. Let's talk now about the pitching. I want to start with Keeler Morphe, who started this game. Statistically, not the best outing you're going to see from Morphe. And in fact, you look at the box score, it was a little bit ugly, but still, you got a brief glimpse of what makes him such an interesting prospect on that pitch that he struck out George Lombard Jr. with in the first inning. 99-mile-per-hour fastball up in the zone. Lombard swung right through it. I know the results weren't there, but you could see the stuff on display a little bit, even if his command of it was not the best on Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, the stat line, it wasn't great, but I still loved it. I mean, it's an exhibition game. He's trying to show off what he's got. He's 18 years old, amped up beyond belief, I'm sure, to start the game. And to me, just having him start the game over the guys that we ended up seeing later on, it's like that's a vote of confidence from the club about what they think he can bring to the table as well. And yeah, he's just running high 90s. Maybe he touched 100. We won't ever know. But he will at some point this season. But I loved it. Just go out there, put on a show. Yeah, the control was not where we want it to be and where it will probably be during the season, knock on wood. But I think he gave you a look at what his stuff is, and it's exciting.
Yeah, there's no doubt that was the biggest stage Keeler Morphe has ever pitched on. An 18-year-old kid with a couple of innings at Delmarva last year. And now it's spring training lights, but it's the bright lights of spring training. It's a night game. I don't even know if this kid's pitching a night game since he's signed with the Orioles, to be honest. It's different out there. And he's going up against George Lombard. He's going up there against Spencer Jones. I enjoyed the Spencer Jones at bat, not going to lie. He's facing a very advanced New York lineup. And, you mentioned him being amped up. You saw him bring it down a little bit at times when he would start to get out of control. It looked like it was an awful camera angle. Michael Ash trying to hide these guys the best he can in this game. He's like, I'm going to show you, but I'm just going to show you just a little bit. So it's hard to tell exactly what he was throwing. And of course, we got a couple of 98, 99s from the broadcast mentions there, but it looked like he would slow it down and throw a couple of breaking balls, get a couple strikes, but then you get 2 strikes on a guy and get jacked up again. It's like, all right, here you go. I'm going to do it again. And it's 99 above the guy's head. And now he's behind in the count. And it's like, all right, he's a young kid. Take this with you to Delmarva and build on last year. What little you pitched last year. There's very little mileage on this arm. The ceiling is still incredibly high. The secondaries looked good. He impressed Rock. I even saw Rock tweeting like, "Hey, this kid's got some stuff." Like, you're impressing a guy like Rock. You're doing something right. Yeah. Shout out to Keeler Morphe. I wish more people would be able to see like a star-studded performance like some of these other arms had, but you at least got to see that it is a high octane arm for sure.
Yeah, there were a few good pitching performances in this game. Cameron Weston in the 9th inning, scoreless frame with a strikeout. Levi Wells an inning and a third, scoreless. Pat Riley, 2 scoreless innings with a couple of strikeouts. Luis De Leon, who I have to say looked pretty good in big league camp for the Orioles earlier this spring, scoreless inning with a strikeout in this game. Nestor Herman also had a scoreless inning and was backed by an excellent play in right field from Judd Fabian. So a couple of good pitching performances in this one, but what stood out to you guys?
Pat Riley, I thought really, look, I loved everything we saw from the pitching. Even the guys that like Bragg also gave up a run, gave up a hit, whatever, maybe walked a batter. But I thought every single pitcher that came out showed flashes of, like Vivek said in the chat, flashes of what you could dream on, what these guys can do and why they're so highly regarded. At least by us for now and by everyone by the end of the season is my prediction. But I thought Pat Riley just that electric fastball was there. And yeah, I think he went 2 innings, 2 scoreless innings, walked 2 batters, struck out 2 batters. But I just think he looks a lot more polished. And again, it's 2 innings, so who knows? But he looked a little bit like his stuff ticked up. Maybe it was adrenaline, maybe not, but he was sitting like 97 instead of touching 97. But again, no real velocities, just what they said. Yeah, I think he stood out, but the pitching, I just loved every minute of it.
Yeah, I think we're gonna hit on Levi Wells in a prompt later on. So I'll save some Levi Wells thoughts for then. That was a very good outing from him. Double on TV outings for Levi Wells. Start opening some eyes there. Yeah, for me it was De Leon. Like that was quick. That was what, 7 pitches? Do they have the pitches here? They don't have the pitches on this thing, of course not. I'm pretty sure it was 7 pitches, 2 ground ball outs and a strikeout. That is prime Luis De Leon. I think we've kind of been, I don't want to say down on De Leon. Like I think what we've mentioned a lot this offseason whenever we're talking about him and doing the top 50 update is that it just didn't seem like he took a big step forward last year while so many other arms did. But De Leon didn't have a down year by any means, but that's what he does. 68% ground ball rate 2 years ago, a 60% ground ball rate last year in the minors, 97 from the left side with a truly A+ slider. Like he's got a starter's mix, but if he needs to fall back to the bullpen and you're going to pump upper 90s from the left side with a wipeout slider and keep the ball on the ground 50 to 60% of the time, like that's another arm that I don't think gets enough love at the moment because, like I mentioned, so many other guys broke out last year. But when he gets to Double-A this year, if he can build on what he's done in High A, I think De Leon's going to firmly put himself back on the map this year.
Absolutely. Yeah, he was fantastic. Again, it was not many pitches, and speaking of just underrated, I mean, I love that Cameron Weston was able to come in, get the win with the Orioles coming back in the bottom of the 9th. Nice, perfect inning with the strikeout. Ho hum, another Cameron Weston, nice outing.
Yeah, it was great to see that from Weston. And with De Leon, like I've said before, if he puts it all together, he's a top 100 prospect because there just aren't a lot of pitchers from the left side that have the kind of stuff that he has. The problem that he had last year was that after he was promoted to Aberdeen, because he was pretty much lights out in Delmarva, after he got promoted to Aberdeen, he had the command issues were glaring. And what I noticed, what seemed to happen a lot was that he would come out of the bullpen and have a 3-inning outing where the first inning, pretty clean, and then the second or the third inning, he would just hit a wall and would struggle to throw strikes. If he can avoid that this year, if he can avoid the big inning in that respect, I think he's going to put together a really nice year. Now, I'll go over to the hitters in this game because we've already touched on Bradfield and his performance. DJ Layton, 1 for 1. As Nick mentioned at the beginning of the show, this was our first chance to really see Layton. And in fact, we're probably not going to see a whole lot of him this year because he's going to most likely start down the FCL, might end up playing the whole season there. If he gets to Delmarva, it's probably not going to be until late. But you're already starting to hear some things that, at least internally, the Orioles are very high on this guy. And for the little bit of glimpse that we saw on Saturday, he's got a pretty interesting skill set.
I loved watching DJ Layton just because, yeah, I've never seen him step in a batter's box in an Orioles uniform before or an affiliate uniform before. It was hard to rank him in the preseason. Like, yeah, there's some good reports, and clearly the Orioles are high on him. But I know personally for me, it was just hard to decide how high exactly do I rank him. I know some outlets have him as a top 30 prospect. It's harder for me to rank these high school guys that don't have a ton of fanfare or a ton of, high octane behind them coming into the draft. But still, like, I don't know who the Yankees pitcher was, but it was a 98 mile per hour fastball, according to the broadcast, that he took right up the middle. Little slight shift on him, beat that, and eventually scored what would be, I think, the game tying run on the Austin Overeem triple there. He's got wheels, as do most guys that were in that lineup have. Beautiful knock. You start out your career 1 for 1. It's an unofficial game. It's an unofficial at bat, but in our eyes, he's 1 for 1 in his career. And yeah, shout out to DJ Layton. I need him in Delmarva ASAP, because if that was just a tease, then I can't wait until the end of the summer for like a month-long call-up in Delmarva. I need him up in Delmarva in like 2 months.
Yeah, love to see it. Just taking 98 right back where it came from. Nice base hit. I think it's, again, just like it says a lot to me that they had Keeler Morphe start the game over all these other pitchers. It says a lot to me that DJ Layton and Steven Martinez were able to get into this game at such a young age, and especially Layton have never played professional ball before, and get in there. And Steve Martinez popped up in the infield, but Layton able to get a hit in there in his one at bat. And I feel like maybe this is where we should talk about, as an aside, that Matt Blood was on either, I think it was the spring training game the day before, getting ready for the spring breakout game, or maybe it was earlier in the day, talking about Nate George and how he's turning heads at minor league camp and is the talk of the town in Twin Lakes. Is that not Twin Lakes? Ed Smith, I don't know, whatever you want to call the minor league side of the thing. So a couple of high school guys who maybe could hit Delmarva sooner rather than later and show off what they got in the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking again about the hitters, Leandro Arias, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, he won this game for the Orioles, a walk-off single in the bottom of the ninth inning. And Arias, who's the 19th ranked prospect on our list, has been on our radar for a while. And he had an interesting season last year in the sense that he was at Delmarva for a while, went on the IL, came back, and it just seemed like he could never really quite get it going at the plate. And as I was following him last year, I thought, okay, this is going to be a case where a guy who's young, he's only 19, goes to Delmarva, doesn't overwhelm in his first year there, but he'll go back next year. And that will be when you want to start to see the big adjustments. Arias got to Aberdeen before the season ended and was actually a little bit better at Aberdeen than he had been at Delmarva. From what I saw of him, again, just 2 at-bats on Saturday, you can see flashes of what makes him an interesting prospect. A guy who can play up the middle, good line drive stroke, good eye at the plate. I feel like that if you want to look at someone who's kind of in the middle, towards the middle of the list now, he's 19th, as I said, on our list, probably in the middle of most top 30s, who could move up this year. I think Arias has to be a guy that you look at because of what he can do at his age and the fact that he ended last year strong. If he's able to carry that momentum into this year, he can be in line for a nice season.
Absolutely. I think he's got a really mature approach, just a mature offensive game in general. I think a couple solid at bats, again, just taking the pitch where they are and hitting them into the outfield. And yeah, game winner. I mean, that's a little bit of the pressure, ice water in his veins. Got the job done. So you love to see it. I do think he's a big breakout potential this year. I think there's a lot of guys in the system this year that have this huge breakout potential, but he's certainly near the top of the list on who I would predict to do that.
I think it's funny because Aaron Estrada wasn't in this game, right? No, he was not in the spring breakout game. But I think it's funny that Aaron Estrada, we look at him a couple of years ago when he first joined the organization as this maybe like Freddie Bencosme 2.0 type guy, someone who I think that was, a prediction of ours at one point, that he quickly rises through the lower levels of the minor leagues and just hits. Well, Aaron Estrada is the one that's developed the power with like almost double-digit home runs last year. Leandro Arias, after he was signed, I remember Fangraphs being the high list on him because of the power potential. And now I think they've dropped his power grades a couple of notches. And it doesn't seem like Leandro Arias is really ever going to develop into that type of power. But the hit tool, I think, is impressed. And I think that's like a 50, 60 grade hit tool that he's got on him now. It's funny how those two guys have seemed to switch over the last couple of years. And yeah, Leandro Arias was hurt last year. Like he spent some time in the complex league. I don't remember what exactly the injury was, but I do remember him being in the complex league for a lot longer than I think anyone anticipated him being. He was knocking the cover off the ball, 2-3 hits every single game, and they just weren't bringing him back up to Delmarva for whatever reason. They finally did, and it was like a below league average bat. But like Zach said, he got to high A. He held his own up there for the 2-3 weeks he was up there. So I'm excited if that hit tool is going to break out. We'll see. I don't really know anything about the defense, so I can't speak to that. But if he's just going to be a hitter and can rise up the ranks quickly that way without the power, then maybe he's the next, Freddie Bencosme type player instead of Estrada. But I'll take it as long as it's one of them.
Vance Honeycutt with the inside the park home run in this game, part of a 1-for-2 performance. Now we have to acknowledge Spencer Jones really butchered that fly ball. That was pretty bad, but still, it was fun to watch Honeycutt run around the bases. If you want to see his speed on display, watch that clip because you can see from that he can fly. We've talked a lot about Honeycutt in the last few weeks, whether it's been our top 50 countdown or some of our other preseason coverage, but this was probably for a lot of Orioles fans the first opportunity to see him. What were your guys' impressions of his performance in this game?
Yeah, that ball should probably be caught like 95% of the time, but still he struck the ball well. And like you said, he got to show off his speed. But my favorite part of the VP's game was that he had some nice at-bats, didn't strike out, took a walk. He's going to do that, but you want to see indications that swing and miss maybe are going to cut down a little bit. Well, it looked pretty good in this game here, but yeah, him and Bradfield, if they both hit and make it to the majors, could be pretty electric in that outfield and on the bases. So yeah, super fun to see. And I guess Austin O'Vern you could put into that mix as well, hitting a triple. I think Clark Clegg on Twitter said he looked good. He's standing out at the minor league side of things, and yeah, it's just a super talented group of speedsters that maybe can hit the ball harder than people think.
I think both of those guys. First with Overn, yeah, he gets completely overlooked. Said this all offseason because this is a deep, really talented outfield group that the Orioles have. It is the strength of this system. Overn is no slouch in any category you put him in. He is up there toe-to-toe with Fabian and Bradfield in a lot of categories. And he had a beautiful rebound in the Cape Cod League after a bit of a downturn when he was at USC to close out his career. But he got rid of football. He focused solely on baseball, and he took off. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch this year. We'll see how good that hit tool is. But with Honeycutt, it's kind of the same thing. I think he gets overlooked, and just because whenever anyone mentions the name Vance Honeycutt, it's can he hit? It's the hit tool. It's the whiff. And yes, those are massive, massive holes in his game. But I think it distracts from the full picture of who Vance Honeycutt is and what his potential is. Like it's not an exaggeration when I say that Vance Honeycutt truly he probably has the highest ceiling of any hitter outside of Samuel Basayo in the system. He has a long way to go to reach that, but I don't think a lot of people truly understand just how good of a prospect Vance Honeycutt can be. They immediately just point to the faults. And that game, a 1-game sample, we'll see what he does this offseason. But yeah, 3 at-bats. He made contact on 2 of them, and he walked. I'll take it. And you know what? Yeah, he should have been out the other time, but the wheels. Yeah, at least he showed off the wheels. That's all I cared about. He showed you a tool in his toolbox, and it was immaculate. So
yeah, I'm going to go back to O'Vern for a minute because, Nick, you wrote a pretty good piece about this on Substack a couple months ago. O'Vern has 270 grade tools, and we talk all the time about how Bradfield has 280 grade tools. O'Vern's got 270 grade tools with his speed and his defense. And I think we know that the eye at the plate is going to be pretty good. It's just a matter of how the bat is going to come along. And while, yes, he did have a little bit of a down year at USC, he performed well in the Cape Cod League and the limited sample size we saw last year. After the draft, he performed pretty well. So I feel like O'Vern is one of those guys that could play really well in Aberdeen because spaces, power alleys, for him to just pepper line drives with, he's going to cover that ground easily out there in the outfield. And you could see him really rack up the extra base hits, even if the home run power isn't there this year.
yeah, it was, you talk about Matt Blood giving shout outs. Matt Blood had a quote right after last year's draft that they were in on O'Vern at a very early stage and stuck with him even through the struggles. And so to see him rebound on the Cape, I think was more than enough for the Orioles to go ahead and pull that trigger there and bring in O'Vern when they did. And yeah, going into the 2024 season, not the year before, but going into the 2024 season, he had first, second round grades on him by some in the the draft prospect industry. So yeah, the buzz wore off a little bit, but this was a kid who had extremely high draft grades and extremely high expectations on him after that freshman year at USC. And yeah, you've got two elite tools and you're a premier defender at a premier position. Yeah, O'Verne is going to be a stud to follow in Aberdeen. Having O'Verne and Bradfield, I don't know what the rest of Aberdeen could look like. If it's like a Thomas Sosa, Austin O'Verne, Vance Honeycutt outfield in Aberdeen to start the year, I mean, that's just as impressive as the one we saw in the spring breakout game.
Yeah, I got to get there first week of the season to Aberdeen. But yes, apologies. It was Chris Clegg, not Clark. I don't know what I'm thinking. Clark Griswold, maybe. But he tweeted out, Orioles Austin O'Verne has given me impressive looks this week, both on the backfields and at the spring breakout game. He's an impressive athlete, plus a better runner and a really strong defender. O'Verne has shown the ability to hit the ball hard and gets it in the air often to the pull side. And yeah, that's exactly what the Orioles want their hitters to do. And he's doing it. He's going to make an impact at the plate, on the bases, in the field. Impact player.
Now, some of the guys we haven't talked about tonight, like Dylan Beavers, Levi Wells, we're going to be talking about a lot later this week when we get into grading the bold predictions from our listeners. You're going to want to check that out. But before we wrap this up, Bob, Nick, any final thoughts?
This spring breakout game was what I needed to fully get ready, get me excited for the minor league season, because we're going to see all these guys and many more night in and night out. And it's been too long. I know we get burnt out by the end of the season, but man, I'm ready to get back in there, dive in the deep end.
Yeah, I really honestly wasn't too excited for this game going into it. Just knowing that we weren't going to get like any numbers. Like, it's cool if you haven't seen these guys before, but it's like, I want numbers, I want data. That's what I need on these guys. And we're not going to get any of that. And then I thought it was only going to be 7 innings. We got 9 innings. That was a pleasant surprise as well. But these guys showed out. The Bradfield interview, like I mentioned. And even if it's just a spring breakout, practice game, whatever, there's a sign of the future here. Orioles prospects beating up on the Yankees prospects, what little prospects they have. It was a good night. Good night in Birdland. Good kickstart. And I do agree. I was jacked up for the season, but this is like, let's go. We're like, what, 10, 11 days from minor league ball. We're just hours away from the start of Major League Ball. I'm even excited for this Japan series. Like, that game was exactly what we needed to get 2025 going.
Absolutely. And we will be back later on this week to grade the bold predictions of our listeners for the 2025 season on the 20 to 80 scouting scale. You're not going to want to miss that. I should mention that we've had a pretty busy week here. Former Oriole and Hagerstown Flying Boxcars pitching coach Arthur Rhodes joined us in the middle of last week. If you hadn't had a chance to check that out yet, please do so. And we were just on Locked On Orioles with Connor Newcomb for our annual minor league draft. You should go check out that episode. And we will be back later on this week. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to our Patreon community and sign up to become a member today. You can join for as little as $3 a month and have access to bonus coverage throughout the season from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as other perks that come with being a patron. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by BetOnline and part of the Believe Podcast Network. Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we grade your predictions. We're going to dive into the bold predictions that our listeners have submitted, and we're going to discuss on a 20 to 80 scale how we feel about those predictions. That'll be on tonight's episode of Orioles on the Verge, which is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for betting on all the madness. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from college basketball to a $200,000 bracket contest, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Now, every year on this show, we have our predictions. And in fact, we're going to bring those to you next week when Connor Newcomb, the host of Locked On Orioles, joins us for preseason predictions. We're going to cover the Orioles, all of Major League Baseball. We're also going to have some over-unders. That's one of our favorite shows that we do every year. That's coming up next week. But we thought as a warm-up, this week we would try something new, and that is we would talk about your predictions, the predictions that you, the listeners, have for the 2025 season. And these came in through the Bold Predictions channel on our Discord chat. We're going to read those off tonight. And if you happen to be watching the show live and a prediction comes to you while you're watching this show, feel free to drop in the comments and we might pull it up on the air. And I'm going to just dive right in here with the first prediction. And as a reminder, we'll grade these on the 20 to 80 scouting scale, 20 being the worst, 80 being the best. This one comes from David C. His bold prediction is Adley wins MVP this year. Nick, how are you grading that one?
I think that's a pretty solid one. Just because counting stats wise, Adley had a lot of similarities in 2024 compared to 2023. Clearly some areas that he's going to improve on. I think realistically, he can get back to 20 home runs, 30 doubles, right? More RBIs with an improved offense. Walk rate should climb back up. And I think, projections love this Orioles team. Fans and national media for sure, maybe not as much. So I think if this Orioles team is hitting its strides, pitching well, and leading this AL East are right there as one of the top AL teams for much of the year, I think a lot of voters are going to look at Adley as the general, the leader behind the plate, leading this ragtag pitching staff full of 45-year-old nobodies. And yeah, get some hype. This is the kind of thing that I'd put money on Adley winning World Series. I think that's a good bet. It's long shot odds, but realistic. That's a solid, 70 grade prediction, I think, because I do think that is very realistic, in all honesty.
Yeah, I like it too. I think Revenge Bod Adley is going to be on a mission this year. He's got Robinson Shearnurse and Buck Britton in the clubhouse with him now, just going to add to his superpowers. And obviously, it looks like he's completely healthy and motivated. So I think it's his 26 age 27 season. So he's right in the prime of his career. 60 grade prediction for me. I like it a lot, even though I'd still put Gunnar ahead of him if he could ever get into a baseball game. Man, it sucks when the MVP candidate's out for the season. Sorry, I'm just getting my Birdland Twitter / Blue Skies, wherever you post baseball anymore, takes out of the way.
Yeah, I'm going to go with 65. So I'll split the difference between you guys here. I really like this prediction. I do think it's going to be tough for Adley because you're going to have that question of, is he even the most valuable player on his own team? Because Gunnar Henderson is going to be right in the thick of it. And who knows, as we get further into this episode, we might find some possible dark horse candidates on the Orioles roster for down ballot MVP consideration. But I do feel like Adley's going to bounce back, have a year in line with what he had in 2023. He'll avoid the second half swoon. And we know that he does a little bit of everything, and that helps when you're behind the plate. And if the Orioles get a good performance out of their pitching staff, I suspect he's going to get a lot of credit for that among the voters. So I do think that this is a really good prediction because it's bold, but it's also pretty realistic.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I read the next question, just shout out to our Discord, especially the patron channels. Like today, there was a over 100 post discussion debate about what a platoon is and how many we have going into the season. There's not a day that goes by when we're not arguing about Mountcastle or Mateo or whatever rehashings need to go on a daily basis. But it's a great group in there. If you can, if you want to be a part of it, then sign up for our Patreon. But Vivek, who has been calling Dylan Beavers Kyle Tucker light all preseason, says he predicts that Dylan Beavers has a Kyle Tucker light season. about a 275 average, 350 on base, 450 slugging, right around 800 OPS with 25 steals, 15 220 homers, and 25 doubles. What do you say, Nick?
Yeah, this is, you talk about Discord. This is, sometimes I feel like the patron only Discord jokes and banter moves on to the show, and some people are like, what the hell are they talking about? Anytime you mention Dylan Beavers, it sends the bat signal to Vivek, and he's going to say Kyle Tucker light. Just throw it in there. Because coming out of the draft, there were as far as like the traits Dylan Beavers had, a lot of Christian Yelich-esque traits and a lot of Kyle Tucker-esque traits, according to the public reports. I saw a fantasy analyst coming into this year put a Tommy Pham comp on Dylan Beavers. Don't hate that offensively. I'll take that, prime Tommy Pham. But as far as the slash line is concerned, it's within reach. I think the slash line will probably be lower across the board, but I do love the power speed potential here. And if he's going to carry over this spring success that he's having into the regular season, combined with his Rule 5 eligibility next offseason, it's going to be, whether it's because he's progressing or there's a trade or he's fighting for a roster spot or whatever it is, or he fails this year, either way, it's going to be an adventure, I think, for Dylan Beavers this year. And I'm pretty excited to watch that ride.
Yeah, and hopefully it's not an adventure out there tracking balls in the outfield. Am I right, Mark? But I think this is very reasonable prediction. I think if we've seen that Beavers has this in him, he had at least a stretch of this in him at Double-A Bowie. It's going to be tough moving up to Triple-A at the same time and doing it, but I could see it. He has looked good he's had a chance to get into the Major League Spring Training game. So, I'll give it a 55 grade prediction.
Yeah, I'll give this a 60. Like Nick said, I think the slash line might be a little bit high. I mean, if he hit 275 this year, I'd be thrilled. But I do think the slash line is a little bit high. The power and speed numbers sound just about right. I didn't realize I knew it at the time, but I really didn't appreciate it in the moment how efficient of a base stealer Beavers was at Bowie last year. 31 for 34 in stolen base attempts. Now, he's not going to have Roberto Mercado as his manager this year, so the stolen base attempts might come down a little bit, but that's a sign to me that he's going to be successful at a pretty high clip. So stolen base totals seem about right. 15 home runs, just about right. I wouldn't even be surprised if it's a little bit higher than that. But, yeah, I like this prediction.
Speaking of home runs, going back to the Major League level, Callie's bold prediction was 4 infielders have 25 plus home runs this year. What do you think about that one, Bob?
I love this prediction. I think it can happen, honestly. If Ryan Mountcastle gets enough playing time and he's had a good spring, seems like he's pulling the ball with authority lately in the last few weeks. Maybe he can have 25. I think Gunnar will have 25 plus, and Westberg certainly has a chance to hit 25 plus. I guess Holiday's the one where it's like, is he going to be able to have that much juice? I think he could. I think Holiday could easily hit 25, maybe not easily, but I think he could definitely hit 25 home runs this year. So I'm giving this 80 grade. I love it. If it happens, then I don't know. Are we making history? Because that's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look this up. I know the 96 Orioles, the infield hit a lot of home runs. So I'm going to look that up while Nick answers it. But I'm going to give this one, I'll go back to 65 for this one. I don't know that I see Holiday getting there this year. I do think that it's in the not too distant future, a 25 to 30 home run season for Holiday. I just don't know about it this year. Westberg, maybe with the fences moving in, a full healthy year, he gets to 25. But again, that might be towards the high end of the range for what he does. But I could see a scenario where you have at least 2 infielders, maybe 3 get there this year.
Yeah, this one's going to be really tough to happen. As far as the optimism goes, obviously this is a fantastic one, but Gunnar is a slam dunk, is going to get there. Westberg, like Zach said, yeah, you could easily see a path where he gets to 25 plus with the wall moving in, and he had 18 last year and like 110 games or so. He could get to 25, but I'd like to see a more well-rounded approach maybe by Jordan Westberg and more well-rounded offensive profile. I'll take if he's 18 to 20 home runs again this year, if he can walk a little bit more and be more productive across the board. Mountcastle, Oopsie's the most aggressive projection on him at 22. I think he can get to 25 this year. Like we said last year in the mailbag. I hope he does. Holiday, I don't see Holiday getting close, if I'm being honest. And I've said many times, I think
toe
Holiday.
tap. Come on, he's got the toe tap.
I buy it. I think 10 to 15. I think Holiday's going to get 10 to 15, but I want to see him break out. I want to see him, and it doesn't even have to be the power. The power is in there. The power will come. But this year, if he's getting 30 plus doubles and 20 plus stolen bases, I am more than happy with that. And I'll wait for the power. But yeah. And you figure playing time as well. Like how much is he going to sit versus lefties? How aggressive are they going to be? TBD. But Holiday is I think clearly the one that's gonna, of the four, struggle the most to get there. And he's gonna hit 30 this year now because we're just gonna dog him.
My hot take is Jackson Holiday ends 2025 with more home runs than Jordan Westberg. 26 to 25, apparently, because I said it as an 80 grade prediction. So,
we could have really upped this bold prediction by saying Ramon Urias was going to hit 25, and none of us took the bait. So I just looked it up. The 96 Orioles had 4 infielders with 20-plus home runs in Rafael Palmeiro, Roberto Alomar, B.J. Surhoff, and Cal Ripken Jr. 5 if you count Todd Zeile.
Yeah.
Who hit 20 with the Phillies before being traded to the Orioles, where he hit 5 more to bring him up to 25 in the 1996 season. And we'll stick with the theme of home runs here and go to this one from EJ. Tyler O'Neill and Heston Kjerstad will combine for more than 55 home runs. What are your thoughts on this, Nick?
That is a tough one. I do think Kjerstad plays a lot more and makes a bigger impact than I think what some people expect or assume he's gonna make this year. I don't know how. I'm not gonna sit here and try to put the puzzle pieces together on this show, but I think he's gonna get that playing time. 55 home runs, you're counting for Tyler O'Neill to stay healthy for a second consecutive year, which prayers up, fingers crossed. If he does this, they're capable of doing this. I see this one. I see them struggling to get 55 though between these two guys. That's a lot of home runs. TBD on how the new wall plays out there in left field, or the wall moving in a little bit, but this is a tougher one, I think.
Yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I'll give it a 55 grade, and I'll say that for the 55 home runs, 55 burgers, 55 fries, 55 home runs by Tyler O'Neill and Heston Kjerstad, I could see maybe 50, but 55, I don't know. I just don't know if the health is going to be there for O'Neill to come and combine that with kind of a mini breakout for Kjerstad. That seems like a lot to ask, but I'll take it for sure.
I would love for it to happen, and it's a fun prediction to think about, and I think it's a good one overall, but I'm going to give it a 50 because to get that from two guys that are going to be your right field DH option, you'd have to have a lot go right. I'm not saying that it can't happen, but a lot would have to go right. O'Neill would have to stay healthy, and I think that if O'Neill is healthy, he's going to push 30 homers this year, but he's got to stay healthy. And then for Kjerstad, it's got to be that he gets the at-bats that he needs to get to 20 to 25 home runs this year, and he produces consistently enough to get there. Again, I think he can do it, but that's probably the best case scenario for him.
All right, another Tyler O'Neill prediction, and this one was again spurred by a debate that was had in the Discord on the patron side. Elijah says from the Warehouse Pod, shout out to them guys, Tyler O'Neill hits more home runs than Anthony Santander. Some people are mad that Santander was not re-signed, and instead they went with a clearer downgrade in Tyler O'Neill, who can't stay healthy to save his life. What do we think, Zach?
I'm going to give 60 to this one because I like that Elijah's going to plant his flag on the side of Tyler O'Neill. I do think that Santander is going to finish the year with more home runs. I think that he'll hit well at that ballpark up at Rogers Center. I do think O'Neill's going to have the better overall season. Higher F4, higher WRC plus. I think that those numbers for O'Neill are going to grade out better, but I think Santander ends up with more home runs.
This is a 20 grade prediction. For the 20 minutes I spent looking at park factors and searching through Baseball Savant to try to form an argument for one side of this question. And I spent way too much time when I could have been doing something else. But I would not expect anything less from Elijah to provide a thought provoker here. I think it's tough. Like, I don't know. Toronto isn't super friendly to lefties when it comes to home runs, but obviously righties isn't a paradise in Baltimore, and Santander is a switch hitter, so he is going to be hitting from the right side plenty as well. Where Toronto, I think, was like top 10 in park factors for home runs for righties. I don't want to say a bad thing about Santander, and I love Tyler O'Neill that he's here. This is an extremely tough one. But yeah, I think this is a good thought exercise because it made me think a lot. If O'Neill is healthy, I think the Orioles signed him and were aggressive with O'Neill. I don't know why exactly, but I mean, we all have an idea. We've talked about it many times, but I think O'Neill's going to see a lot of run in the outfield. I think O'Neill is going to be a prominent hitter in this lineup for this team. It's why the Orioles were aggressive on him and wanted to bring him in and felt comfortable letting Santander go. So yeah, let's give the edge to O'Neill and say that right field wall moving in, he's like, all right, I'm going to party with it.
Yeah, I mean, look, glad Santander got that bag. That was a nice payday for him. I do wonder how he's going to hold up physically on that turf for half of a season, especially when you get towards the end of that contract. I think this, again, it'll be close. It'll depend on health for both guys. I think I'll give it a 60 grade because I like it. But I think I would put the betting odds lean slightly towards Santander if I was making them.
True. Here's the one from Ben. AL East predictions. Orioles 1. These are Ben's predictions. Orioles 1, Red Sox 2, Yankees 3, Blue Jays 4, Rays 5. What do we think about this one, Zach?
So it depends on whether or not you think this is actually bold. Because I don't know that it is that bold, but given the pessimism surrounding the Orioles, at least among Orioles fans, it probably is bold. So I'll give it a 55. I do think that we have a pretty clear sense of who the top three teams in this division are. But you could really put them in any order at this point. I'll save my prediction for the AL East for next week. I'll just say it does not match what Ben has. But Ben's is bold and plausible, depending on what your definition of bold is. But it is plausible.
Yeah, it's very plausible, which is why it's not bold. 20 grade. What is this? This is bold predictions, not medium, lukewarm predictions. Come on, Ben, do better. No, it's solid. It's solid.
I think it's bold because the Rays are in 5.
That's true.
The 5 spot here. That was my thing. The Rays are in a crappy situation in a spring ballpark, but it's not going to affect just them. And as long as they can stay healthy, like Brandon Lau and Josh Lowe, they're going to mash in the short porch. I think Yandy Diaz always seems to be underrated. It's I don't want to say stars and scrubs lineup because it's not like superstars here, but it is your Junior Caminero is very fun to watch and very good at hitting home runs. This lineup does have some holes, but the pitching staff, like I don't know if I'm being crazy here, but I love it. Is super risky. We all know this with Ray's arms, but I love this pitching staff if they are healthy. McClanahan and Shane Baz. I think Ryan Pepio takes a step forward. I'm a big Ryan Pepio fan. You got Taj Bradley in there as well. I'm forgetting about Drew Rasmussen, which you shouldn't do because he's also a very good pitcher. Yeah, there's injuries here, but I don't see Tampa Bay finishing last. So I do think that is a bold prediction. To to put Tampa Bay last when you've got New York falling apart and you've got Toronto being Toronto.
Go this one here from EJ and talking about a pitching prospect that's getting a lot of buzz this spring. EJ predicts Levi Wells will end the year as a top 10 O's prospect. Nick, I will start with you on this one. What are your thoughts?
80 grade prediction. Levi Wells it is. No, it almost brings a tear to my eye to see all the Levi Wells love. I'm glad that he's getting this hype and this attention. The velo, we'll see what it sits at across a full regular season sample, but even in the short sample, that velo is hot. He's touching 100. He did not touch 100 last year. Zach Fruit did. Levi Wells did not. He was 97, 98 maybe max. But yeah, I've been a believer in Wells though because of the stuff. And I watched every single Levi Wells outing last year when he was in Aberdeen, and it was so frustrating because so many nights it was clear as day that the stuff did not match the results some nights, especially early on. And then you go back. I wrote the piece over on Substack back in December. 3 pitching prospects I want to watch closely in 2025. It was Chase Alsop, Yeber Cartaya, and Levi Wells. Because post-injury Levi Wells was very good. 5.21 ERA, which was 2 runs lower than his pre-injury ERA. 2.24 FIP, which was 2.5 runs lower than his pre-injury FIP. Strikeout rate was down, but the walk rate went from 13% to 4.5%. Third best stuff plus among all 22-year-old pitchers in the minor leagues, according to Baseball America's model. There's no guarantee he pans out, but he deserves a long, hard look in 2025, and he's off to a great start with these spring and spring breakout games.
The stuff is undeniable. It's there. It's beautiful. Bare minimum seems like a power reliever in the major leagues at some point in his career, and it's sad that it took me almost halfway through these questions to realize how I want to grade these. But I'm going to go by boldness, and I think Levi Wells as a top 10 prospect is pretty damn bold. I'm giving it a 70 grade. I don't think I could agree that he'll be top 10, but I like the boldness.
Yeah, I landed a 70 here as well. I think Levi Wells is really going to shoot up the rankings this year. What gives me pause on top 10, though, is that I feel like by the end of this season, if it's not settled, it's going to be close to settled that Levi Wells is going to be a reliever. And unless you see a lot of trades on the pitching side and the farm system thins out a little bit, he's likely going to have pitchers who project as starters ahead of him, which could make it a little bit tough to crack the top 10. Doesn't mean it's impossible. It's just going to make it a little bit tougher. But I do like the boldness of this one, and I like the plausibility of it.
For sure. Let's go with Garrett, who says, again, here we go. Tyler O'Neill. I think we know where some of these were sparked from. Tyler O'Neill makes more starts at DH than anyone else on the team. That's interesting. Nick?
All right. Well, you got me thinking. I don't know how I'm grading these either. Thanks for giving us talking points. That's all. That's what I'm grading. 80 grade talking points for this episode to get us to another week. Nah, they didn't sign him to DH. I don't care who plays where or what position. Just give me the lineup. Let's play ball. But I think you're going to see a lot of Tyler O'Neill in the outfield. Ryan O'Hearn and Ryan Mountcastle are still here, despite many people don't want one or both of them here. Adley's going to be DHing. Nah, I don't think Tyler O'Neill leads the team in DH appearances.
Yeah, I don't think he does either. I'll give this one a 50. The only way I see it happening is if he misses a chunk of time during the season with an injury, comes back and they make him a DH just to keep him healthy, or they make him DH, let's say 3 days a week, and then put him in the outfield for 2. Something like that I could see. But I agree with Nick. If O'Neill is healthy and he stays healthy throughout the year, he's going to be primarily an outfielder.
Yeah, I think I agree. I'll go 50 as well. I think he'll be in the mix. I think he'll be probably top 4 or 5 on the team with DH appearances, but I think it'll mostly be between Ryan O'Hearn, Heston Kjerstad, and Adley for the top 3 choices.
Another one from Ben here. Jorge Mateo plays in at least 50 games with the Orioles this season. And can I just quickly answer this? This is 20 grade because if he's healthy, he's going to appear in like every single game.
Yeah, what are we doing here? I guess it's a little bit bold just because he probably made this when, the injury news was he's not going to be ready for opening day, and probably just trolling people like Garrett who think he should be DFA'd immediately. I think it's logical that if he's healthy, and it sounds like he's going to be healthy, if not by opening day, soon after, he's already playing in spring training games. He should easily clear 50 games. I don't think he's going to last all season on the roster, but then again, I probably said that the last 2 years as well. So
he's not going to.
Yeah.
He is. You can't clear him up. There's no medication that's going to get rid of this. There ain't nothing. He is here to stay until the contract is up. Jorge Mateo is going to be in our lives, and we are going to have to like it.
Yeah, he might lie dormant for a while, but he's always there. I'll say 45.
What was Chance Cisco's power grade when he was coming up through the minor leagues? Because that's what I give this prediction.
Probably
that's
like
a good question.
45, 50.
No, that's just a joke. But yeah, I'm going to go with a 45 on this one because I agree with you guys. As long as Mateo is able to step on a baseball field, he's going to be in games. So the only way he doesn't appear in 50 plus games is if he doesn't come back until sometime around the All-Star break. All right, so I will go to the next one here, which is from Eliza. Jackson Holiday, another Jackson Holiday prompt here. Jackson Holiday will be leading off by July 1st. What do you say to that, Bob?
I like it. I think this is 70 grade prediction. I think this would be a wonderful development. I think he's got the perfect leadoff hitter attributes, unless Enrique Bradfield can come up and continue to get on base the way he does with his speed. But Jackson Holiday, he's got the hit tool. I think it's underreported how great his plate discipline is. He's walking like 20% of the time in his professional career. Yeah, I really like this. And I think it helps a lot with the construction of the lineup, because then you can have Adley 2, Gunnar 3, Tyler O'Neill 4, and just go from there. So yeah, 70 grade. I love this prediction. I don't know how true it is, but it's bold, and I think it's going to happen eventually, and it's going to be really good for the health of the lineup day in and day out.
Yeah, if he's hitting, and especially if he can become that line drive hitter where he's finding the gaps to get on base, he's using that speed to put himself in scoring position for Adley and Gunnar behind him. Like, I like having Gunnar being the leadoff. Gunnar leadoff home runs are fun, but if I can get Jackson Holiday to smack a double and then Gunnar Henderson hits a 2-run home run to start the game, that's even more fun. And if they want Holiday to be aggressive, I know the base running has been, not everybody's cup of tea this spring training. They weren't lying when they said they were going to be aggressive in the spring. I do firmly believe that will be toned down when the regular season starts. This is spring. It doesn't matter. Get comfortable. Do stuff that takes you out of your comfort zone right now. But, we'll see what Holiday can do when he gets that chance. But I think that would be ideal if he could be at the leadoff spot by the midpoint of the season.
I give this one a 75. Holiday led off in the minor leagues. I do think that the Orioles, although Gunnar Henderson is a very good leadoff hitter, the Orioles are not afraid to mix things up from time to time with the batting order. So I think there will be opportunities for Holiday to get to that spot. And here's the other thing, is that with the growth mindset that this organization has, if Holiday gets off to a good start this year, they're not going to leave him down the 8th or 9th spot in the lineup all year. They're going to try to find ways to challenge him, whether that's leading off games, whether that's batting third, whatever it is, playing him more against lefties. They're going to try to find ways to challenge him. And I think that this would be part of that step. So I like this one.
All right. This one trick. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, you go ahead. I jumped it.
Sorry. Okay, here's another one from Callie, which he understood the assignment. Let's just say that, because his prompt here is Jackson Holiday 30-30 season. Pretty bold, Nick.
Yeah, that's a lot. For boldness, yeah, that's top of the scale. But the 30 stolen bases I could see him getting, but the other half maybe in like 2-3 years.
If this was for his career, like, will it happen at some point in his career? I'd say love it. Definitely could happen. This year, I don't know.
I'll give this one a 70. I appreciate the boldness. I don't think it's going to happen. I do think we'll get to 30 steals, but I don't see 30 home runs coming this year.
Yeah, agreed. I'll say 70 as well, just because, again, he's bringing boldness to the table. There's no doubt about it. Callie, good job.
Jackson Holiday is hitting 30 home runs and all 4 infielders hitting 25 plus. The Orioles have won the World Series. That is on lock. It doesn't matter.
Unfortunately, they went cold for a week in October, so we didn't.
That's true. It all comes crashing down. This one tripped me. This one tripped me up. And I'm like, why did you put this one on here? And then it's just, you think about it. Major leagues. I did not understand that part of the assignment. Matt asked, Enrique Bradfield Jr. will have a stolen base in the postseason. And to be fair, I did not see postseason the first time I saw this question. And so I was like, of course he's going to have one stolen base, but a stolen base in the postseason with the Major League Orioles in 2025. Bob, what do you think?
It's bold, and I think it's going to be pretty accurate. I actually think I would concur. I think this is going to happen. If we make the playoffs, I see no reason why he wouldn't be added to the 40-man roster and be on the playoff roster simply for that opportunity to play some really solid defense, steal a base, show off the speed on the bases. So, yeah, I like this one a lot. I'll give it a 80 grade prediction to go with the 80 grade speed that Enrique Bradfield has.
I'll give this one a 70. I still question if the Orioles are actually going to move ahead with putting Bradfield on the 40-man roster unless they think he's their opening day center fielder next year. I question if they're going to use the 40-man spot on him when they don't necessarily have to, but they will have to make a quick decision on Judd Fabian and Dylan Beavers after the season if both of them stick in the organization throughout the year and don't reach the major leagues before the season ends. They're going to have to decide on those guys, whereas Bradfield will have another year. But that said, if the Orioles do think that Bradfield has a good chance to be their opening day center fielder in 2026, and he's at Norfolk for most of the second half, putting up good numbers, this becomes a lot more likely.
It's conflicting just because I do see this organization being reluctant to bring him up, a rookie up for the playoffs, even if it is strictly just to run, because they're like, he hasn't done it before. They're like, what if he gets caught? Right? Like, that one's tough. But like I just said, with Jorge Mateo, guy's not going anywhere. That's your guy who's going to be the speed, defense, late game combination. If Mateo's gone, absolutely, I could see Bradfield doing it. But I will, to take this back to the spring breakout discussion. I don't think, and I'm including myself here, that we don't understand just how much this organization loves Enrique Bradfield. And if he picks up with the bat where he left off last year in Bowie, I think people, all of us included, are going to be surprised at where Bradfield ends up by the end of 2025.
We're going to go to this one from Kevin Brown, and I think this is oddly optimistic for Kevin, which is to say it's actually not that optimistic, but it's not like overtly negative either. An AL East team loses 95 games this season. Now, we talked about Ben's prediction earlier. I think these two kind of tie together nicely. So what are your thoughts on this one, Bob?
I'm surprised, and this is progress for our Kevin Brown, that he didn't specify the Orioles will lose 95 games. I think it's bold just because I think most of the AL East teams improved, I feel like, or at least made attempts to be competitive this year. And I feel like that's half the battle in MLB these days. If it was going to happen, as crazy as it sounds, I think it might be the Yankees, just because if these injuries continue, say Judge gets hurt, it's a the pitching is not that deep anyway. I could see a monumentally bad season in New York, and I would love every second of it, especially after they just made the World Series. But I don't think this is likely. I like the Rays. I don't like the Blue Jays, but I think they're good enough to avoid losing 95 games. So it's bold, but I don't think it's particularly close to happening. So I'll say 55.
Yeah, no shot. I think this is the least scary that the AL East has been in a long time, but I don't think anyone's bad enough that the rest of the league's going to just walk all over them. Like, do not overlook Boston, even though there's so much turmoil and it seems like drama, drama, drama. I don't think any of that matters when they start playing games. I'm still scared to death of Boston, as we talked about all offseason. Still scared to death about them. Don't overlook New York. They're going to try to stay relevant, but I do agree with what Bob just said. If Aaron Judge goes down, it's donezo for them. If Max Fried goes down, it's donezo for them. Tampa Bay, I think, is a much better club than a lot of people are going to give them credit for. And Toronto's going to be dumb enough to fight and claw their way near the top of the AL East for a large chunk of the season. They're going to fall off a cliff. Something terrible is going to happen up there, but it always does. Apparently Kevin Gossman's throwing nothing. Like, his velo dropped apparently today. I think I saw a note about that.
91.5 today, fastball.
Well, it's starting for them with the pitching injuries. And they are not deep, I don't think, as far as the pitching is concerned. And their lineup is already stars and scrubs, and the scrubbiest of scrubs. So, but they're going to fight their way in the beginning, but not enough to lose 95 games.
I'm going to give this one 55. I don't think anybody loses 95 games. I will say this, though, which is that I think there's a scenario where Toronto or Tampa Bay blows up their roster at the deadline. I agree with you guys. I think Tampa Bay is better than what people are giving them credit for, but this is also sort of a lost year with what is going on with their ballpark. So if they get off to a bad start, I could see Shane McClanahan being traded. I could see Brandon Lau being traded. I could see them moving some of their bigger pieces. And then the Blue Jays, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bill Bichette are going to be free agents at the end of this year. It doesn't look like either one of them are going to stick around long term. So if they get off to a bad start, they have to move those guys, right? Like, they're not going to hold on to them all year just to lose them in free agency. I wouldn't hope, for their sake. But I could see that if things are going really bad for them over the first 2.5 months of the year, that they blow that roster up at the deadline. Then the possibility comes into play that someone loses 95 games. I still don't think it's going to happen, but it's not completely out of the question.
Yeah, that's fair. And hopefully the Blue Jays start at least 1-3 or 0-4, since we know how things are kicking off there. But let's move to a more positive prediction. Sorry, Kevin. Another one from Vivek, who says Cade Povich will finish top 15 in American League Cy Young voting. He looks pretty good this spring. What do you think, Nick?
This is a Vivek prediction. It is very optimistic. I don't see it happening. I will take a step forward from last year. And the Cade Povich that we saw flashes of last year was very good. Like, yeah, this spring he's not walking guys this spring. And this is like a 10 inning sample or so. It's, a 3.5 FIP. He's looking good out there. And I mentioned you guys beforehand, I'm catching up on on rates and barrels. Excuse me. Catching up on rates and barrels, and like to joke a lot of time that despises Cade Povich. Every time Cade Povich's name comes up, it's this stuff is disgusting. It's not good. Disgusting as yet, not good. Disgusting. And I'm listening to an episode today where he seems to turn the corner on Cade Povich because of Cade Povich's more broad repertoire, and he likes these changes that he's seeing in Povich. So you're convincing Eno. So there, I hope we do see the year 2 breakout from Povich. I think this rotation, I don't want to say absolutely needs it, but it will carry this team a very long way. I think if Povich has a year 2 breakout, but top 15 Cy Young is like 2-3 years from now conversation.
Yeah, I give this one a 45 because I don't see it happening. Honestly, if Povich posts a sub 4.5 ERA over 110 innings with a walk per nine somewhere around three and a strikeout per nine approaching 8.5, let's say, I would be thrilled with that season. I honestly would, because I would see that as a big step forward for him. So take that as a win if that's something what you get. If he finishes top 15, we talked about how the Orioles World Series odds are a lot better if they have four infielders that hit 25 plus home runs and Jackson Holiday has a 30-30 season. I'm thinking like all-time wins record and the World Series if Cade Povich finishes top 15 in Cy Young voting and you have four infielders with 25 plus home runs.
Absolutely. I'll give it a 60 because it is bold. And I mean, like I said, if you combine his September with his spring training so far, things definitely seem to be shifting in the right direction. I still don't think it's very likely. Probably like if you can get odds in Vegas on this, put $10 on it because you're going to make a bunch of money. But first, he's got to beat out Albert Suarez for that fifth starter spot. So I would like to see him make the opening day rotation and then have Suarez be kind of like sixth man / long reliever, what have you. But yeah, he hasn't even made the team out of spring training. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
Shout out to Albert Suarez, his last few spring outings. He is looking very good as well. So I'm not complaining. I don't care who's stepping up. I'm happy guys are stepping up and pitching well. And I'm glad the decision, I think it was Hyde or somebody said, I believe this was the Orioles I was looking at, they're far away from making that decision on a fifth starter. I love to hear it. These guys are making it tough. We got two more, it looks like here. This one's from Billy, and he says, Judd Fabian, great catch the other night. Judd Fabian, a 2020 season with Norfolk. Bob, what do you think about that one?
I think it's a good prediction. I don't know if it's necessarily that bold. I think this is a lock. If he plays, if he's healthy, this is a lock to me. So I'm going to give him a 40 grade here. I like the prediction itself. It's just like, if you're not at least going to do 25, what are we doing here? Billy, I know you're the Norfolk guy. You should know better. Judd Fabian is going to hit some bombs. He's going to steal some bases. He's going to make some great plays out in the outfield, and you're going to love watching him play. And I can't wait to get your reports in the Discord. But yeah, I'll give it a 40.
I'm going to go a little bit higher on this one. I'll give it a 50 because if you're saying he's hitting 20 home runs, then you're taking, I think, a glass half full view of what his hit tool is going to look like this year, or at least close to it, because I don't think there's a scenario where Fabian struggles to make contact the way that he did after getting promoted to AAA last year and hits 20 home runs. I don't think he's going to approach 20 if he's striking out that much. But if the hit tool progresses the way that it did last year at Bowie after he struggled in AA in the second half of the 23 season, then yeah, I do think he's going to probably get 2020 or very close to it this year. But I know that there are some very valid questions about the hit tool. So I give this a little bit higher grade because I know that some people maybe aren't sold on the idea that Fabian's going to make contact consistently enough to get to 20 home runs. But if he is making more contact, I think he gets there.
He better get 2020 because the strikeout rate is going to be high. We all know that. So he better be hitting those home runs and causing havoc on the base paths. When he does get on base via the walk, he can draw a walk. I think this is, as far as being realistic, this is a solid 70 grade prediction here. Boldness, not so much, because I think he's a righty hit at Harbor Park. They fare well. You don't have the wind tunnel over there in right field. And honestly, after watching Judd Fabian the other night, and we know he's a premier defender, but after watching him make that catch the other day in the spring breakout game, I think you're going to be seeing a lot of Judd Fabian highlights, more so defensively this year. And that's not a knock on the bat or disbelief in the bat. But like I've said many times, that cavernous center field at Harbor Park, it truly is a monster. And Judd Fabian is going to have no issues taming that beast out there. And that is going to be the biggest joy, I think, to watch, because we know he can hit bombs. But watching him play center field down there in Norfolk this year is going to be a lot of fun.
Let's wrap up with this one. I think this is a fun one here from EJ. One of Aaron Estrada, Leandro Arias, or Thomas Sosa will end this season at Norfolk. Nick, what are your thoughts?
I do like it. I don't think it will be Sosa, but I will say if it just needs to click for him. If it clicks, he's going to take off like a rocket. Not a SpaceX rocket, but like a rocket that can successfully launch into space. I think it's going to be Estrada. Just because, and I know Leandro Arias just had a great game we just talked about, but Estrada adjusted very well pretty well to high A after his promotion. And so, yeah, I think one of them does reach AAA. And so I like this prediction. I think this is a solid 70 grade on the boldness and being realistic, because Estrada and Arias have high floors. And so as long as they're hitting well, they're going to rise quickly. And I don't see why one of them doesn't get that week 6 game cup of coffee at the end of the year in Norfolk.
Yeah, if like all the seasons ended at the same time, I'd say this is pretty wild, bold prediction. I'll give it 70 grade regardless. But yeah, I do think that extra week the AAA gets is going to help this one come true for one of these guys. I'm not sure which, but it's like you said with Thomas Sosa, if it clicks, it's going to be a sight to see, and he'll easily get there. With Estrada, yeah, I mean, the performance he had last year between high and low A was pretty eye-opening, and if he can just continue that progression, I could see it happening for sure. And Arias, he's one of our big breakout picks potentially for this year. So yeah, I like this one a lot. And if it's not them, I just can't wait to see. It's only a matter of time that there will be some huge breakouts this year. I just can't wait to see who it's going to be, and it could easily be one of these three.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. I'm going to give it a 70. I agree with Nick that if one of these three gets there this year, it's going to be Aaron Estrada. He adjusted nicely to high A last year. And even if he starts this season back at Aberdeen, I could see that being a quick jump up to Bowie. And if he hits well there, he gets a cup of coffee in Norfolk at the end of the year. What stood out to me about Estrada last year, and what I'm really curious to see coming into this season, is what that power is going to look like, because he doesn't physically fit the bill of the guy who's going to project to hit for more power as he gets older, because he's just not that big of a guy. There's not a lot of physical projection there necessarily, but he's got good hands. He can get the bat through the zone pretty quickly. So he managed to hit 9 home runs last year. I wouldn't be shocked if he finishes the season in the 12 to 15 home run range, if he's able to spend a good chunk of time at Bowie. And at that rate, he probably is hitting well enough to warrant at least a very brief cameo in Norfolk at the end of the season. So I could see him getting there. Sosa, of course, it's the most exciting player to dream on in this group, because I think he's the closest thing you have to a 5-tool prospect. And then Arias just seems like he's going to be one of those guys that's really steady, can hit the ball over the place, good plate discipline. I think he's going to have a big year, but of the three, I think Estrada's the most likely to get to AAA. And for that does it for this episode. Thank you to our listeners for submitting these bold predictions. And who knows, we might check in on these during the season, or we might open this back up for a prompt during the season for mid-season predictions, whether it's a trade deadline, the playoffs, whatever it is, and perhaps do this as an episode or a bonus episode on our Patreon community. So keep an eye out for that during the season. We will be back next week at 8:30 Monday night with Connor Newcomb, our good friend, the host of Locked On Orioles. He's going to be joining us for our preseason predictions. You're not going to want to miss that. We will be predicting all things Orioles as well as MLB, and we're going to do over-under on player projections. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, Orioles on the Verge.substack.com. Nick has been pumping out draft content weekly over there. If you've not had a chance to check out those articles, please do so today and become a subscriber to our Substack. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to our Patreon community and become a member today. You can join for as little as $3, have access to the Patreon exclusive sections of our Discord chats, as well as bonus coverage throughout the season from Bob, Nick, and myself. That's over at Patreon. You're not going to want to miss that. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by BetOnline and part of the Believe Podcast Network.